Brian Baker. And Brian, I'd like to ask you, how did you become interested in the paranormal?
Oh, I'm Gen X, so pretty much pop culture was all supernatural in the 1980s, right? So
Same, yes.
um, that helped. For me, it started at a young age. I had a weird experience in British Columbia when we lived out there. My parents had left me with family friends while they went on a kind of a trip to Vancouver Island, and I had this. It was on just outside of Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows area. It was more rural and not as developed back then, so the house was kind of on the fringes of the town or the city. So it was older. They had lots of cats and dogs, and I woke up in the middle of the night with the door opening. I was thinking it was one of the dogs or cats, right, coming in to investigate. And I crawled to the end of the bed. Um, Nothing was there, and I
Oh,
pulled myself
wow.
back up to the head of the bed, and I looked in the opposite corner and saw a black mass, and it started taking the shape of a person. It obviously scared the crap out of me. So I I had a stuffed Dino from the Flintstones. I gripped that and threw the sheet over me, and then I fell asleep. I know it's odd,
Um,
but I fell asleep. So it was kind of that was kind of weird. That kind of laid the foundation. And then, growing up in a very secular household, there was no talk of, the supernatural, preternatural being evil or anything like that. So, talk about afterlife and all that stuff was pretty freely talked about and never really permanent. And then, the X-Files happened in the 90s, and then Unsolved Mysteries, sightings, and just, yeah, that pretty much added kindling to the fire.
wow. Is that kind of what led to you creating the Superstitious Times? And also, what is the Superstitious Times?
Yeah, well, with the Superstitious Times, being a journalist, I've written about pretty much everything, news, business, stuff like that, um, cheesecake stuff for men's magazines, all you name it, right? And then I was kind of looking at, well, what do I really want to write about? What I've really enjoyed writing about is like historic folklore and stuff like that. Um, I was working at a call center at the time, and I'm like, well, why don't I just do this? Like, launch a website, write about the stuff I want to write about, the paranormal in Canada. Not be afraid of it either. Own it. And I think that's what a lot of people are. Like, I'll get to that later, but it's a lot of people are afraid to talk about the paranormal, the ghost stories, all that stuff. Um, so I started the Superstitious Times with that in mind, doing long features, reporting on any weird goings on in Canada, and went from there. Um, I had a bit of a bunch of stories that I had written for other publications that never came to fruition. So I had an interview with Tony Spira about the Annabelle doll. And that was one of the first long features I did for that, and it kind of tied it into the release of The Nun and stuff like that. So that kind of dates it 2018. So yeah, and yeah, I just wanted to write about the stuff. I've been writing about it, and that kind of led itself into getting a book deal with Dundurn Press.
So, is that Eerie Whispers that we're talking about?
Yes, yeah, Eerie Whispers. It's coming out September 30th.
Very
It's available. Pre-orders are available now through Dundurn, as well as Indigo and Amazon, wherever you shop for books. Um, and that was kind of touching on the issues of the paranormal in Canada and comparing it to, our cousins south of the border, the US, as well as our, motherland, England, and kind of getting that idea where, ghost stories are ingrained in British, folklore through Dickens, through, you know, um, Susan Hill, of course, and Letty and Black and all that. So when I was looking at that, and I was looking at, the United States where there's a glut of, paranormal shows and people running around and, as um, Skeptical Inquirer editor Benjamin Radford said, the democratization of paranormal investigation. So that's why you get plumbers doing hardcore science when they investigate something. And so that element of, the capitalizing on the paranormal and dark tourism that the US has and the British just ingrained in their culture. Canada doesn't have that. We're just very quiet. We're very reserved, laid back. And I wanted to explore why that was. Was it because we're afraid of offending people, as Canadians always say sorry, eh? So, or was it an element of, we can't make money off of it, so why bother? And I think that's, Canada is very risk averse, don't want to offend. There's also the element that, I explored it briefly in the book, but the artistic aspect and how we treat the arts in Canada. You have Hollywood in the US, but Canada, movie makers have to either go abroad or they have to ask the government for funding. And when you've got a government like Harper, when he was in cutting 45 million from arts and culture, um, and in the liberals, to be fair, liberals have been guilty of it too. But it's um, it's that aspect, and I think going back to when the Massey Commission was done, Canada was looking for its identity back in Louis Saint Laurent's time, and that I think led to this explosion of Canadian culture and the exploration of the group of seven, and you had Margaret Atwood, Mordecai Richler, and just this amazing explosion of academia and all that, exploring our culture and developing it. And then when the money ran out, so did the pop culture and art, right? So I spoke with Rue Morgue writer Paul Corp for the Canadian movies segment of the book, talking about how even our movies don't touch on ghosts, which is interesting, but our TV does kind of explore that and old shows like Poltergeist: The Legacy and Friday the 13th and all those shows that were on during the late 80s and early 90s.
Do you think that something like Eerie Whispers and Superstitious Times and maybe that changes sort of Canadian pride, so to speak, uh,
Yeah,
would
what
maybe launch like a renewed interest in this kind of thing, and maybe other people would share their stories, and there could be a big community of people who are interested in this kind of stuff.
I'd love that. I'm gonna play the typical Canadian and be very humble about it. I don't think the Superstitious Times has really made inroads to that degree. But I think Canadians are looking more into it, and I've seen a cultural trend that's probably happened synchronicity in synchronicity with the Superstitious Times. There are more paranormal conferences. People are talking more about it. You are seeing, Ottawa is opening up and they do a celebration of the Day of the Dead, kind of for the Mexican community, and there's a festival there. We're seeing more of the bridging of cultures between indigenous and Canadian and sharing of the stories, and they're becoming more known in culture and Canadian culture. And also one of the funnest parts or the most enjoyable parts of the book writing was talking to non-European
Right.
Canadians about their beliefs in ghosts. So, the Caribbean diaspora and talking about Duppies from Jamaica. And then also talking with a sheik in Mississauga about jinn and
Wow.
exploring Jewish folklore in Shadim and Dybbuk and kind of digging up those elements and how much they contribute to discourse about the paranormal in Canada as well.
That sounds amazing. I'm really looking forward to reading this. As someone who is a skeptic, but is always looking for a reason to believe. I mean, I've also seen strange things that I've, have kept in the back of my mind since childhood. Also, a big X-Files fan, etc. So, yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'm really looking forward to reading that.
No, it was great. I'm very thankful to everyone who spoke to me about it. I spoke with Aaron Goodpipe, who's a spirit researcher from Dakota and Anishinaabe nations, and a Métis storyteller from Manitoba. Even exploring the North, which there's a lot of great history in places like Yukon and Northwest Territories and Mikala in Nunavut as well. So,
Wow. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Maybe have you seen Red Lights, the movie?
well, your red lights. I mean, it has piqued my interest. I have two kids, so when they actually go to bed and fall asleep, then I'll watch the horror movies. But that
Yeah.
time has been few and far between. I have watched odd one here and there, but I as soon as I caught it, I'm like, I'm definitely in on this. Like a modern Fox sisters kind of exploring, trying to find out whether there is psychic phenomena in our world.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
And thanks for having me. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, not at all. I will go ahead and add all of your socials and links to pre-order the book and everything so that anybody who watches this will be able to do that.
Awesome, right on.